The drums of war are beating a little bit over Taiwan and China.
More than a little bit, yeah.
But there, I can't even see a justification of a just war. What is the long-term benefit to society if you do military intervention?
I also think this, and I've been saying this for a while, but I do think there is this like there's like this empire mentality that Americans have got to shake off, like as if it's even a question of whether we should allow it or not. Like, are we in a position to allow or not allow that? Why do we have? It's almost like if you were like I hope China doesn't invade Taiwan. I hope Taiwan remains as free as possible. I hope China becomes free. I root for freedom and prosperity for everyone, but I also root for like everybody to have a healthy marriage. But if you were talking to me and you were like, "Hey, the guy down the street is cheating on his wife," like, I don't think we can allow this. I'd immediately be like, that's really not my place. And then on top of that, I also have no power. I have no authority over what they do in their marriage. Like, I have to be concerned with my marriage. And the idea that, like, imagine if there were the political will to invade Mexico. Like, if DC decided we're taking Mexico City, like that's going to be part of America now, and we're taking it by force. And then China was like, we're not sure if we can allow this. I think immediately most Americans would be like, allow? Like, how the fuck do you think you're going to stop us from taking Mexico City? What are you going to do, China? You're going to send your Navy ships over here to fight us off the coast of Mexico? Good luck with that. And at least from my understanding, in almost all the war games that they've run, if we did militarily, even if it doesn't come to nuclear weapons being used, in which case the whole world gets blown up, but even if we go to militarily try to stop China from invading Taiwan, and everyone agrees to not use nukes and we just fight a conventional war, we lose that war every time.
I think what you said applies to a lot of the wars we've been involved in, but China and Taiwan is a little bit different because of TSMC,
right?
Because there's an economic dependence.
If that was the concern, then the response would be, we need some type of Manhattan Project. And I'm not supporting a government project here, but there would be, we need some type of Manhattan Project to say, we're going to make these things here. We can't. And look, I was running that experiment before saying, like, what if we all pinky promise not to use nuclear weapons or something like that? But that's not the reality of the situation. The more reality, look, even in Ukraine, everybody, the biggest hawks, the biggest pushers of this policy and Joe Biden and policy to fund Ukraine, no one's suggesting we send in the 82nd Airborne. No, which is really the only thing that could repel the Russians right now and restore, Ukrainian, the original sovereignty of the Ukrainian borders. But no one's suggesting we send in the 82nd Airborne, because we all know, well, we can't have a direct war with Russia. That's the end of the world. And same thing with China. So, I'm not saying microchips or whatever aren't important, but we can find other ways to. Taiwan is not magical. Like, we can produce these things in other places, no?
So you have the humility to say that you don't really know much about the situation. It sounds ridiculous to say, but there's something magical about not Taiwan, but TSMC. It's incredibly difficult to manage the supply chain and manufacture at such a low cost that they are. And to add to that, China has been signaling about the one China policy. But you're absolutely right that you shouldn't be doing the Washington thing of beating the drums of war. It's like completely the counterproductive thing. You should actually try to find partnerships with China, build friendships and cooperation. Like, India is doing a good job of this. Like, build friendships. This is the 21st century. Conflict, this Cold War thinking is going to be destructive to the economy, destructive to humanity, to the flourishing of the individual nations of the world. There's just nothing positive except making money for the military.
Well, yeah, and it was totally destructive during the original Cold War too, and almost led to nuclear war on a couple of different occasions. But look, I would just say, and I'm no defender of the Chinese regime. I hate communism or fascism, whatever they are, some hybrid mix of the two.
They're paying you, aren't they?
No, fuck them. I don't care. By the way, I get a lot of people speculate online, but I'm not getting any of these checks, man, and I'd really like them to start coming in.
Yeah.
But there's, like, even when it's like China, you say China's asserting the one China policy, but the one China policy is the policy of the United States of America and has been for 50 years now, right? So it's not, I think what's happening there a lot of times is that essentially, even though officially the one China policy is the policy of the United States of America, all of these American politicians and different figureheads across powerful centers in America are saying that China doesn't have the right to go into Taiwan. And then China's in the position of being like, well, hey, wait a minute. No, that's not actually the policy. We maintain this one China policy, but we allow them to kind of do what they want to do. And, the most obvious example of this was when Joe Biden actually said, like, oh, we wouldn't allow that, and we would militarily intervene if they went into China. And then, and this was so bizarre, then the White House, whoever that was, came out to correct the president of the United States and say, no, the policy of the White House is the one China policy, which, look, I mean, again, I think the whole point of this is that the reason why whoever the hell was able to overrule Joe Biden and his administration, I don't know who that is, but the whole point is that if you say, and this is why there is some wisdom in America accepting the one China policy, is that if you tell China that we recognize Taiwan's independence and that they're not a part of China, that might be the type of thing that would make China invade and say, no, we're not accepting that. And so at least right now, it's like kind of like, okay, look, this is the reality. It's something that you kind of run up against with the war in Ukraine a lot and with the situation in China and Taiwan, is that there are constraints placed on us by reality. It's not all just how would you like the world to be? How would you like it to work? Obviously, I think we would all like that bigger countries don't invade smaller countries and bigger countries don't bully smaller countries around. That is not the way of the world. We are a big country that is the biggest bully in the world. So we're in no position to but what we're kind of in the position is just like, you're like, hey, we'd sure love if you don't do that. Mm-hmm. You can do it and you can get away with it, but we would sure love it if you don't. And so the goal would be to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen. When Vladimir Putin starts talking about like, hey, if you keep pushing the idea of Ukraine joining your military alliance, I'm going to invade that country. The goal there, or the move there would be to be like, okay, we'll stop talking about that. Is there something else that we can agree on? Like, is there a way that you will promise you won't do anything to them? And and we'll promise we won't bring them in our military. Like, that's the goal. You don't just go like, no, fuck you, we're doing it anyway, over and over and over again until they do the thing.